Okay, so like, have you ever noticed how when you're talking to someone, you can practically predict what they're going to say next? Or when you're playing sports, you just kind of know where to move. Our brains are doing this incredible prediction thing all the time, and today we're diving deep into how that works. We've got some pretty intense research to unpack, so buckle up.
It's really amazing how our brains create these internal models of the world, almost like they're running simulations to help us navigate everyday life.
So not quite mind reading, but something like that.
Well, not exactly mind reading, but the way our brains use information is surprisingly close, actually. One of the key concepts from the research is this idea of active inference. Basically, it says that our brains are always trying to minimize surprise.
Okay, minimize surprise. I like that. But what does that actually mean? Like, can you give me an example?
Sure, so imagine you're reaching for a cup of coffee, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
Your brain, without you even realizing it, has already predicted how your arm will move, how heavy the mug will be, even how the coffee might slosh around inside.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
And if everything goes according to plan, no problem. But let's say you pick up the mug and it's totally empty.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right, that's a surprise. It's a mismatch between what your brain predicted and what's actually happening. And that mismatch, that's what we call prediction error.
And our brains really don't like getting things wrong, do they?
Exactly. And this whole prediction thing, it's not just a human thing. Do you remember that paper, Active Inference, the free energy principle?
Yeah, it was pretty dense.
Yeah, it was, but it basically said that even simple organisms are wired to minimize surprise. Active Inference, the free enter thomaspar.pdf. They might not have these big, complex brains like ours, but they've evolved ways to keep things predictable so they can survive.
So it's like a fundamental drive, almost like looking for food or finding shelter. It's essential for survival.
Exactly. A predictable, stable environment is absolutely crucial for survival, whether you're a single-celled organism or a human being. And minimizing those surprises, those prediction errors, that's a big part of how we thrive.
This whole minimizing surprise thing, it reminds me of the free energy principle that came up in a few of the papers we looked at. Huang E. Rao, 2011, predictivecoding.pdf, PPP collection.pdf, the predictive mind, Jacob Huddy.pdf.
Wow.
Sounds like our brains are constantly doing a sort of cost-benefit analysis, right?
You're spot on. And when we talk about free energy in this context, we're not talking about calories or electricity or anything like that. It's more about how our brains process information. So your brain is constantly weighing the cost of making a prediction against how much that prediction will reduce surprise. The less free energy your brain has to use, the more efficient it becomes.
So my brain is basically trying to be efficient by predicting what's going to happen next. Makes sense.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about how our brains make predictions about the outside world, but what about our internal world, specifically our emotions? That book, How Emotions Are Made, really got me thinking. It's suggesting that even our emotions are predictions, right?
That's exactly where this research leads, and it's pretty mind-blowing. According to this theory, emotions aren't just automatic hardwired responses. Instead, your brain constructs them based on patterns and predictions. How emotions are made. The secret Lisa Feldman, Barrett.pdf. Okay, hold on a second. I need a minute to wrap my head around the idea that even my happiness could be a prediction. Okay, all right, so let me see if I've got this straight. When I feel happy, it's not just because something good happened, it's because my brain is predicting that I should feel happy based on, like, the situation, my past experiences, all of that.
You've got it. Your brain is like this incredible prediction machine, even when it comes to your emotions.
So how does that actually work? How does my brain go from a situation to an emotion?
Okay, so let's say you're giving a big presentation at work and it goes amazingly well.
I like where this is going.
Your brain is getting all these signals from your body, your heart's racing, you've got this rush of energy, maybe even a smile just takes over your face.
Okay, yeah, I can picture it.
At the same time, your brain is processing all the information from the environment, the sound of applause, your coworkers congratulating you, that feeling of accomplishment.
So my brain's putting it all together, the physical feelings and the context.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's comparing all of that to patterns it's learned from your entire life experience. It's like your brain is a detective trying to figure out what emotion fits the situation.
So in this case, my brain predicts this is a happy situation, and bam, I feel happy.
Exactly. And you experience that emotion as real because it is real. It has a real impact on your body and how you act. But the key takeaway here is that our emotions are shaped by our brain's predictions, not just automatic reactions to the world. How emotions are made. The secret, lisafeldmanbarrett.pdf.
Wow, that is seriously mind-blowing stuff. Okay, so if our brains are essentially constructing our realities based on predictions. What does that even mean for reality itself? This is where the case against reality comes in, right?
Absolutely. That book really throws a wrench in things. It makes you question whether we actually perceive the world as it truly is, or if our brains are giving us a simplified version. The Case Against Reality, Donald Hoffman, z-library.pdf.
So hold it. Are you saying that my brain might be showing me like a highlight reel of reality instead of the full documentary?
That's a great way to put it. Think about it. If you're trying to survive in this complex world, what's going to be more helpful? A totally accurate but incredibly overwhelming representation of that world, or a more streamlined model that helps you survive and, well, reproduce.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like our brains are wired to be practical, not philosophers. It reminds me of that idea from the research Fitness Beats Truth, The Case Against Reality, Donald Hoffman, zlibrary.pdf. How does that fit in with all of this?
You're making a great connection. Fitness Beats Truth goes right along with this whole idea of minimizing prediction error. Our brains evolved to help us stay alive, not to necessarily see reality perfectly clearly. Our perceptions are shaped by what helps us survive, not always by what's objectively true.
So my brain is basically prioritizing what helps me get by in the world, even if that means cutting some corners.
Exactly. And this leads us to another fascinating concept. The idea that our minds don't just exist in our heads. This is where the extended mind comes in.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this extended mind idea.
So the idea here is that we use tools, our environment, even our relationships, to boost our cognitive abilities. The extended mind, annie-murphy-paul.pdf, it's like offloading some of that mental work, those predictions and models, onto the world around us.
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds kind of abstract. Can you give me a more concrete example of what you mean by extended mind?
Sure. Think about something as simple as talking with your hands. You ever notice that you do it more when you're trying to explain something complicated, even if you're on the phone and nobody can see you?
Oh my gosh, I totally do that. I've never really thought about it before, but yeah, I'm definitely a hand talker.
It's not just you. And it turns out those gestures actually serve a purpose. They're not just random movements. They can actually help us think, learn, and communicate more effectively. The extended mind, annie-murphy-paul.pdf.
Wow, you're telling me that even my hands are part of how I think. That's wild. What about other examples? Like, how does being out in nature affect this whole extended mind thing? I know that for me, just going for a walk in the park always helps me clear my head.
You're tapping into something really important. The extended mind talks about how interacting with nature can actually improve our cognitive functions. The extended mind, annie-murphy-paul.pdf. There's something about being in nature, the sights, the sounds, even the smells, that seems to give our brains a kind of reset.
It's like nature is giving our brains a little break from all the predicting and processing.
Exactly, and that can reduce mental fatigue and just make us feel better overall.
So, surrounding ourselves with nature can actually help us think more clearly and feel more focused. This whole extended mind thing is really making me rethink how I interact with the world. What about our social interactions? Are those a part of our extended minds as well?
100%. Our relationships, our conversations with other people, the knowledge we create together, all of that contributes to how we understand the world. The extended mind, annie-murphy-paul.pdf. Just think about how much you learn from talking to other people, from hearing different perspectives, from debating ideas.
Yeah, it's true. We're constantly bouncing ideas off each other and learning from each other's experiences.
Right. And it's not just about taking in new facts. Social interaction helps us refine the knowledge we already have, challenge our assumptions, and see things in new ways. It's a huge part of how our brains learn and adapt.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about how our brains are constantly making predictions, about how even our emotions might be predictions, and now this mind-blowing idea that our minds extend beyond our physical bodies. But how does all of this actually help us in our daily lives? What are the key takeaways here?
That's a big question, right? So first and foremost, let's think about those emotions we were talking about. We've learned that they're shaped by our brain's predictions. Once you understand that, you can start to become more aware of how those predictions are influencing your feelings.
So it's about being more mindful of the stories our brains are telling us about our emotions.
Yes, and recognizing that those stories, those emotions, are based on predictions, not always objective truth.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we become more aware of our emotional predictions?
Well, for starters, you can start by just noticing how you feel in different situations. Pay attention to those thoughts and stories that pop up when you're feeling happy, sad, angry, whatever.
So, like, if I'm feeling stressed, I can ask myself, okay, what's my brain predicting here? What's the story I'm telling myself about this situation?
Exactly. And then you can ask yourself, is this prediction helpful? Is this story serving me? Sometimes just bringing those predictions into our conscious awareness can help us shift our perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. What about this idea of fitness beats truth? How can we use that knowledge in our everyday lives?
Remembering that fitness beats truth is a powerful tool in itself. It's a constant reminder that our perceptions of the world, of ourselves, even of other people, might not always be perfectly accurate.
So, we need to be open to the possibility that there's more to the story than what we're initially seeing.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a healthy dose of skepticism, you know? Question your assumptions. Be open to different perspectives.
That's such good advice. And finally, what about this whole extended mind concept? How can we use that to our advantage? What are some practical steps we can take?
Be intentional about how you use your environment, your tools, even your relationships.
Okay, so like, what does that look like practically?
Well, for starters, pay attention to how your surroundings make you feel. Do you have a dedicated workspace where you can focus? Do you feel more creative when you're out in nature?
That makes me think about how I always get my best ideas when I'm out for a run. Maybe it's because I'm literally moving my body and getting those creative juices flowing.
Exactly. And then think about the tools you use. Does your phone help you stay organized? Or is it a constant source of distraction?
I'm definitely guilty of spending a little too much time scrolling.
And don't forget about the power of social connection. Make time for meaningful conversations. Surround yourself with people who inspire you and challenge you to grow.
So it's about creating an environment, both physically and socially, that supports our cognitive well-being.
Precisely. Remember, our minds don't exist in isolation. We're constantly interacting with the world around us, and that interaction is a huge part of how we think, learn, and evolve.
This whole deep dive has been a wild ride, honestly. It's like we've peeked behind the curtain of how our brains work. And I don't know about you, but it's both fascinating and kind of freaking me out a little.
It definitely changes how you see things, but I think ultimately it's empowering. You know, once you start understanding the world through this lens of prediction and how our minds extend beyond our brains, it opens up a whole new way of thinking about, well, thinking.
I'm already finding myself doing things differently. Like, I'm way more aware of how much my phone zaps my attention span or how much a messy workspace just kills my focus.
That's amazing. It's all about tuning into those subtle influences, right? Those extensions of our minds that we don't even realize are shaping our thoughts and actions. Once you're aware of them, you can start to use them to your advantage.
You know, this whole conversation has got me thinking about creativity and intuition. Like, if our brains are constantly making predictions based on our past experiences, does that mean there's no room for those spontaneous aha moments?
Ooh, that's a great question. And honestly, it's something researchers are still trying to figure out. But here's an idea. Maybe creativity and intuition aren't about breaking free from prediction altogether. Maybe it's more about using the power of prediction in new and unexpected ways.
So are you saying that our brains might be making these subconscious connections, these leaps in prediction, that we only become aware of when they, like, pop into our conscious minds?
Exactly. It's like we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg with those aha moments.
Yeah.
Beneath the surface, there's this whole network of predictive processing going on.
That makes me think about another big question this deep dive has brought up. Free will. I mean, if our brains are so influenced by these predictions that are shaped by our past and our environments, does that mean we're less in control than we think we are?
Now, that is a question that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries, and I think understanding our brains as these prediction machines definitely adds a whole other layer to the debate.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. How does this whole predictive brain thing change how we think about free will?
Well, if you think about it, if our actions are based on predictions that are based on our past experiences and everything, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
It's a little unsettling when you put it like that.
Yeah. It is. But here's the thing. This knowledge also shows us how important awareness and intentionality are. The more we understand how our brains work, the more we can make conscious choices about how we respond to those predictions.
So it's not about pretending we can just erase our pasts or rewire our brains. It's about working with what we've got.
Exactly. We can't just erase our past experiences, but we can cultivate awareness. We can question our assumptions. And most importantly, we can try to make choices that align with our values.
This whole deep dive has been seriously mind-blowing. It feels like we've only just started to scratch the surface of what it means to have these incredible, predictive, extended minds.
And that's the beauty of it. The more we learn about the brain, the more questions we uncover. It's a journey of discovery, and honestly, I hope this deep dive is just the beginning for you. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and see what you discover.
I'm definitely hooked. Thanks for taking us all on this journey with you. It's really changed how I think about, well, everything.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, your mind is more powerful than you probably realize, so keep exploring it.